But you have to realize the biggest mistake we've made in the church over the last several hundred years, but especially over the last 50, is that we have relegated getting saved to saying a prayer. That's the problem. And because we get people to say a prayer, they say, I'm okay now, my sins are forgiven, and they go on living a life in sin. And now they start this cycle that most Christians are under to some degree or another, of knowing they should be free, not being free, condemnation because they're not free, but wanting to be free because that's why they came to Christ to begin with. And yet they've never really come to Christ in the sense that they did what they were told. They just weren't told right. And because of that, and we have to realize Jesus never said anything about just getting saved. That's the amazing thing. He showed us a way. Now, matter of fact, even here, he says this. Well, there's several places I go. Yep, well, we'll just go here. In John 15. John 15, he says, I am the true vine, and the Father is the husbandman. Every branch in me that bears not fruit, he takes away. Now, all right, do you hear that? He's the vine, Father's the husbandman. Every branch in him that bears not fruit, he, the Father, takes away. Do you hear that? Now, people say, yeah, but see, I don't have to worry about that because, no man will ever pluck me out of his hand. Yeah, no man. No man. He didn't say God. Did you see that? We have to realize, and this isn't always pleasant, but it's a whole lot more pleasant than living a life through deception and ending up where you didn't want to go. Right? And this is Jesus. You can't get around this. You can't just say, well, that's your interpretation. I'm not interpreting. I'm just reading. Right? It's right there. And if it was only this time, that'd be one thing. But it's all through Jesus' teachings. He says, every branch in me that beareth not fruit, he takes away. And every branch that bears fruit, he purgeth it, that it may bring forth more fruit. Now you are clean through the word which I have spoken unto you. Abide in me, and I in you. As the branch cannot bear fruit of itself except it abide in the vine, no more can you except you abide in me. Notice the word abide, not visit. Abide. To make your home in, to dwell in, to live in, yeah. I am the vine, you are the branches. Now he just said, notice, he just said, you're the branches. And he just said up there, every branch in me that bears not fruit. So he's talking about us. You got that? He that abides in me and I in him, the same brings forth much fruit. So how do you know you abide in him? You bring forth fruit. If you don't bring forth fruit, you know you're not abiding in him. If you don't abide in him, the Father takes you out. Do you see that? For without me, you can do nothing. If a man abide not in me, he is cast forth as a branch. And what does that mean? What does it mean, abide not in me? You're not bringing forth fruit. You're not abiding with him. See, a lot of people visit Jesus. A lot of people, they say, well, I invited Jesus into my heart. Well, that's the only room you let him have. See, he wants to be Lord, not a visitor. He's not a house guest. Right? And He's cast forth as a branch and is withered. Men gather them and cast them into the fire, and they are burned. If you abide in me, and my words abide in you, you shall ask what you will, and it shall be done unto you. Herein is my Father glorified, that you bear much fruit. So shall you be my disciples. Now, he made a big deal about you being his disciple. He said, you bear fruit, you're my disciple. You don't bear fruit, you're not my disciple. You don't bear fruit, you're not my disciple. Then you're a branch that you're not bearing fruit, and the Father will take you out. That's what he just said. Now, show me in here where he said, unless, of course, you said the prayer. He doesn't say that. Right? The prayer is not a panacea. See, the whole point, it's not about a prayer. He's saying, and we have to realize, it's not that Jesus was trying to set us, what he wanted to do is he was trying to say, look, if you walk over here or you walk over there, you're going to end up in a ditch, and that's bad. He said, here's the path. And if you walk in this path, you're safe. Right? And if you walk over in that path, you're not safe. If you walk in this path, you're not safe. If you walk in this path, his path. If you follow me, if you take up my life, if you take up my objectives, if you take up my plans, if you take up my life, and you walk in my footsteps, you will be safe. Now, automatically, when I hear that, I automatically think back, like, not that I was there, but I think back like with movies about World War II, and not even just that, but also during the Vietnam War, different things, that they had to send somebody out across a field that was possibly a minefield to go first. And many times they had to take the bayonet and they would probe to see where the mines were. But they would send somebody out, and they would go, and as they step forward, they would look where they're going, and they step, and if they made it across without getting blown up, then you know you could make it across, but you had to step in their exact footsteps. The world we live in is like a minefield, and Jesus walked through it without sin, and he made it to the other side. And then he said, look, the wages of walking that way is death. You walk in that ditch, that's death. If you walk in my footsteps, that's life. Why? Because I made it across. And if you step in my footsteps and live the life I'm showing you, then you will walk in the path of peace, and you walk in the way of life. See, it's really just that simple. Now, and you think, well, but who can walk in Jesus' footsteps? Okay, let's be honest. It's not that hard, right? If you're born again, it's even easier. Now, if you're not born again, yeah, it's hard because you have to do it all in the flesh, and you're struggling and get against your basic nature. But when you get born again, your nature changes. And so now it's easier to walk there. But now the difference is, now you got an enemy that really wants to mess you up. Before, you had an enemy, but you were working with him, so, you know, he messed with you, and he might take you out, you know, who knows. But now you got his attention. Why? Because now you're walking contrary to how his people walk, and you stand out. Yep. And so he's going to try to trip you up. He's going to try to do things to make you mess up. And he's going to find every button that he can push on you that'll set you off. Right? He's going to look at everything he can do. He's going to find what you like. He's going to dangle it in front of you. So the key is stop liking it. And the way you do that is you let it die. How do you let it die? You focus on the things that you should be looking at and that you should be thinking about rather than the things that you used to think about. See, if you think about, there are a lot of people, and okay. In the early days of like the Salvation Army, those people got really saved. I mean, really saved. They would go to a house of prostitution, stand out front, witness to the girls there, get them to come down. When they got out there, they'd say, you want to make Jesus Lord? Yes, I do. Bow down right here. Get on your knees right here in front of everybody. And they would pray with them. And then they didn't send them back in there. They said, now, go home. The rest of us will stay here. We're going to win some more. And they would send them back to the barracks where the Salvation Army people lived. And they would keep them there for a week or 2 weeks. They would change their clothing, put them in a uniform, teach them the things they needed to know. But within about 2 weeks, that same girl that was working in that house of prostitution was now out front with the rest of them singing about Jesus and witnessing, and she was a trophy. And they weren't afraid of her going back into that lifestyle because she really got saved. Hallelujah. Right? And nowadays people say, well, if you get saved from, alcoholism, don't go back around the bar. Don't go. Well, I'll admit, yeah, it might not be real wise for you to go in there and hang out. Right. But if you really get saved, you'll hate what you used to love. Yes. Right? See, here's the problem. We try to get people saved because we try to scare them away from hell. Right. And fear does not win people. Right? It only works as long as the fear is there. As soon as the fear wears off, they go back to living their old life. And instead, Jesus said, no man can be my disciple unless he hates his life. So the problem is we're trying to catch the fish that don't hate their life. They still love their life. But we convince them because of hell they need to come into the church and get saved. And they go, I don't want to go to hell. But they don't hate their life. But they don't want to go to hell. So then they come into the church And we tell them, now say this prayer. Now you're born again. And they're like, good, I'm not going to hell. But I really still like my old life. And then they end up going back into the old life. And then you tell them, hey, you can't live that way. Yeah, I can. I'm saved. Saved from what? Right? Jesus didn't come to save you in your sins. He came to save you from your sins. He came to deliver you. But the way you do that is that you have to find the people who hate their life. And you have to find the point that they hate their life. And most people get saved before they hate their life. Or quote unquote say, they get into church. And the bad part about that is, then you got sinners coming to church that never really get saved, and they just get inoculated against it every week by hearing, you're okay, keep on pushing, keep on trying. If you mess up, that doesn't matter. And then they end up thinking, and the bad part is, they know how to put on the right face and say the right stuff. And then they go home, and they're still living in hell. They're still crying themselves to sleep. They're still going through all the stuff that they were going through before. And now what's even worse is that was their only hope. And now that's gone. Because that didn't even stop the pain that they had. And so we have to realize we have to get back to the truth of the gospel. And the truth of the gospel, the only people who are truly saved are disciples of Jesus who do what he said to do. That's it. Why? Because that's the only safe way to be. That's the only safe way to live. Other than that, you're living outside and you're not safe.